It's about I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Gets the ball, gets back, pulls up for the win. Got it! Detroit basketball. Oh, Holloman looks the clock, half court for the win. Oh! The Lions go for it. The Vikings bring it. The pass is a touchdown to give. Javi Baez homered earlier. First one in the air, deep left field again. Yes, Tigers win! Javi is unstoppable!
This is BS Sports.
Hi. How is everybody? Everybody have a good weekend? Anything exciting happen this weekend? No? Nothing? Nothing interesting? Tigers lost 2 out of 3 to the Reds over the weekend. Did that. So, I guess obviously last show went into that show. Pistons were down 1-0. I got to tell you, didn't expect for the following show where the Pistons would be down 3-1. Didn't expect that. Did not expect that. But nevertheless, excuse me. Wait a minute. Nevertheless, and now I'm not focused. There we go. Nevertheless, did not expect us to be here. Really did not. So we do have a great show. We have a lot to get to. None of it, well, some of it's positive. Most of it is not positive. So let's just jump into it, shall we? So what has happened to the Pistons? Like, I gotta be honest. Okay, I'm not, one of these guys who says that, the team that did really good and then they are struggling in the postseason. It's because they were fake. It's because they were totally fake and they weren't ever good to begin with. Some of that is true sometimes. I usually try to say, well, they did do it. So what went wrong? What's going wrong? Let's try to diagnose it. Well, for one, obviously down 3-1, you're getting dominated in basically every game. I mean, obviously we can go by just final scores here, but final scores don't necessarily indicate how far off some of these games were. Obviously, we already talked game 1. You lose that by double digits. Then you bounce back in game 2. You win that by double digits. Then you lose game 3 by almost double digits, and then last night's game 4 was an atrocity. Like, truly one of the worst Pistons games I've ever had the displeasure of watching in many years. Certainly in a game where you have to have it, looking to bounce back, at least split on the road. Couldn't even do that. You get absolutely embarrassed. Double-digit turnovers in the first quarter. Unforgivable. Now, who's to blame? I think I'm not the first person to come up with some of these answers. The number one figure I think to blame as it pertains to the players on the floor is Jalen Duren. I don't know what's going on in the mind of Jalen Duren, but something is not right. I mean, last night he was a negative 11 player, and this is one of his better games. He had 12 points on 5 of 8 shooting. He had 2 for 2 on free throws, had almost 10 rebounds. He almost had a double-double. That was one of his better games. And still, the boneheaded turnovers, the just overall lackadaisical approach, very little intensity, it just wasn't there. And obviously, the other games, I don't need to go through those games, box scores. You know that Jalen Duren has been atrocious. Atrocious. That's the word I'm trying to say. Now, not to be outdone in blame, I have to put a lot of the blame in JB Bickerstaff, because especially in game 4, you're down 2-1, but you're not out of a series yet. If you could split on the road and just as you split at home, okay, you're feeling like you're gonna be okay. You could win it in 6. Not to be outdone, JB Bickerstaff looks totally outmatched in the coaching department. I mean, forget about what you want to say about the roster of this team. Forget about offseason moves that didn't happen, that you wanted to happen, or trades at the trade deadline, or whatever. The roster that Orlando has is not some insurmountable all-star barrage of guys that there's no way to get. Like, compared to the Pistons roster, it's not as though the Magic are some unstoppable force. You can't convince me that it's the case. Okay? Paolo Banchero is a very good player. Franz Wagner's also a really solid player. Desmond Bane's a really good player from 3. But Jalen Suggs, Wendell Carter, and then in the depth department, Tristan Da Silva, Bataze, Anthony Black, no. Okay, this is not even if you want to say, okay, they're a better team than the Pistons, it's not so far beyond to where the Magic are just playing with us. It's just not. I'm sorry. It's just, if you think it is, I don't know. I can't convince you. I don't know. This is, in my mind, at least a comparable roster. And JB Bickerstaff is making them look like superstars. Is making them look like complete monsters. Okay? And look, the other thing to point out about JB's coaching is the rosters that not the rosters, the rotations that he's putting out there. I mean, do we really need to have Karis LeVert be our most minutes off the bench in game 4? Have to have it? 25 minutes and 2 points? Now, he was a good player on the floor. He's a plus 11 player. That was one of his better games, but he can't score. He's not a scorer. Okay, so we have to, if he is getting 25 minutes, well, then I guess you're not getting as much minutes from Adonis Jenkins, who, while he hasn't been able to score, is certainly shown to be more of a more prolific scorer than Karis LeVert. And we're keeping Duncan Robinson out there despite his inability to score and his terrible defense. What are we doing? Again, have to have it. Game 4. You can't go down 3-1. And you trot out the same starting lineup, the same rotation of guys. Ron Holland, I don't even know if he's a real person anymore because he's not on the floor. And Paul Reed, despite last season having a pretty good couple games in the playoffs for Detroit. He's not getting the playing time, despite Jalen Duren being who he is. And Isaiah Stewart, as good as he was pretty good yesterday. Like, you're telling me that you can't find anything for a Paul Reed, for a Ron Holland? Nothing? You're the coach of allegedly the best team in the Eastern Conference by regular season record. You got to come up with something. And the guy you traded for, Kevin Huerter, he got 3 minutes. What'd you trade for this guy for? Like, I'm not saying Kevin Huerter is the savior, but you traded for him. I figure you'd have a plan. He's got some postseason experience. He's definitely better on defense than Duncan Robinson. If Duncan's struggling, why don't you just bring him in? Give him, 15, 20 minutes on the floor. I don't know. I don't know. And then finally, before we finish the blame, I don't want to come off as just being, angry, but Kate Cunningham, that game last night, game 4, that was an atrocity. Okay, that was pathetic. From a guy who's supposed to be the leader, from a guy who's supposed to be the superstar in this team, he did not play like a superstar. I mean, how many turnovers did he have? It doesn't show on the box score. Or wait, yeah, he had 8 turnovers. 8 by himself. He probably had about 6 of them in the first quarter. That is not your superstar point guard. I understand. He's playing by himself. It feels like, right? The rest of the roster's not helping. So he's trying to do it all. But if you keep trying to play hero ball, you're not going to help anybody. You're not going to help yourself. You're not going to help your team. It's just not going to work. And it especially isn't going to work when you're taking 11 threes and you're making just 3 of them. Like, stop taking the shot. Just stop. You had 25 points and almost 10 rebounds. Okay, again, it wasn't a terrible game, but you putting up those garbage shots, and when you had plenty of time on the shot clock, you gotta stop. I feel like Toby when what's his name? The 2 guys in the office are playing the oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on everything. When Andy and Dwight are playing the bluegrass music loud in the break room, and he's like knocking on the window, like, you gotta stop. Like, that's what I am to Kate Cunningham when he throws up another garbage 3. Like, you gotta stop. Just hold on to the ball, drive to the basket, pass it up to Asar or to Tobias or something. Like, you don't need to take that shot. So, this is where we stand. The Pistons are very likely not going to win this series. However, do not let me be accused of totally throwing the Pistons out completely, though I have largely done that. Franz Wagner goes down and will be at least out for Game 5. So this will be back in Detroit tomorrow. Is there a shot that the Pistons can at least extend this to 6 games? Absolutely. I mean, Franz Wagner was very much integral to a couple of the Magic's victories in this series. You take him out of the equation, okay, it's got to be advantage Detroit. And even going in to this next game here, let me just take a look here, and I'm assuming this is after the news of Franz Wagner going down. Detroit's 10.5-point favorites, a double-digit favorite going into Game 5, with ESPN Analytics putting them at a 79% chance of winning. Now, granted, every ESPN Analytic has had them at a higher chance of winning than Orlando, and they have largely not lived up to that. But either way, that does change the dynamic of the series. Because say you win Game 5, well, are they going to rush Franz back and try to just finish it at 6 with, the home court advantage? Or are they going to risk bringing it to a 7-game series to bring him back on the road? I don't know. And I'm not saying that it's likely or that it's even going probable. I'm just telling you that Franz Wagner going down certainly doesn't hurt Detroit. So we'll see. But, the hope is pretty darn low. And the fact that I'm talking about potentially winning this series in 7 when you're the 1 seed up against the 8 seed just really makes me question why we even bothered getting to the 60 win mark just to do this. All right. Let's get to some of the chat here. It's tough being a Detroit sports fan. Yeah, that is true. It is not an easy thing to live with. Get this, the Tigers somehow first in the AL Central at 15-14. I didn't even check the standings, but okay, I'll take it. Mentioned yesterday, Tom Gores was sitting courtside next to the Pistons bench during yesterday, so he saw everything that was going on. Also, I really doubt JB will be fired, but definitely has his seat warmed up. Yeah, I mean, if you lose the series, then obviously you don't have to be fired, but she's got to be warm. I mean, you can't be a 1 seed losing to an 8 seed and not have your seat be a little warm. That's ridiculous. And especially given this would be now 2 years in a row where his team didn't advance in the playoffs. So I want them to be aggressive this offseason. The East will definitely be tougher next year. Now, I'm not saying trade for KD or sign hard, but maybe look back at MPJ or Devin Booker. Yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if the Suns do move on from Booker, as much as he would be an excellent fit. I've made my thoughts pretty clear on Michael Porter Jr. I'm not a huge fan of his. I think he's a little too much of a ball hog, but I mean, he would certainly make your scoring better. But he would probably hurt your defense significantly. But we'll see. I mean, again, maybe desperate times call for desperate measures. You want to get better. Maybe he's a guy you can rely upon to help you get better. He did win an NBA championship with the Nuggets, so there's that. Pistons could win Game 5, especially with Franz out, but I'm really doubting Game 6. That's kind of how I feel. They might be able to advance this to a Game 6, but yeah, hard for me to believe that they'll get further than that. I mean, some of the 2003 3-1 comeback against Orlando. Now, that would be pretty exciting. I mean, look, as down as we all are on this team right now, coming back down 3-1 would really re-energize the fan base. And at the very least, even obviously it's not the NBA Finals. It's not some success. I said that the floor would be get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But look, you win this series, you still have a chance to do that. It's just, man, we must have really had a major blind spot for just how big the weakness of this team was. So, on the point, though, of off-season moves, Boston will be better now with Tatum healthy. Cleveland and New York still dangerous. Charlotte will be better. Tyrese is healthy, but the Pacers kind of sold the 25 finals team away. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see what the Pacers look like with a healthy Tyrese Halliburton. It's going to be hard to see exactly what he will look like back, obviously, because it's a gruesome injury. Who knows what he is going to be like as a player. But furthermore, the other thing to consider is, what was I trying to say? I lost my train of thought. That was so embarrassing. I feel like I got Alzheimer's. I just completely lost my train of thought as I was filibustering there. But okay. How about this? This is kind of what I was going for. Orlando was an 8 seed this year, but they were dealing with a lot of injuries. And we see right now that they are a team to be treated not lightly. Orlando very well could be right back in the mix in the Eastern Conference. What does, like you mentioned Charlotte, what does Charlotte look like next year? Obviously, that team does not exactly have a record of building off of their successes, but, maybe with Conca Nipple, they'll they'll successfully. Maybe they'll do it this time. Who knows? Boston. Obviously, they were below you in the standings, but now they'll have a whole year of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, presumably. The things that you could do, I thought about this. Look, what exactly is the point of having both Asar Thompson and Ron Holland on the same team? Maybe you think about trading one or even, frankly, both of those guys to go out and get a shooter. I mean, there's probably a player out there that you could think of on a team that's kind of sucking or probably going to be selling at the offseason. I mean, today I was just thinking to myself, I thought of a Miles Turner out in Milwaukee. Let me take a look at what his contract situation is to see if maybe Milwaukee wants to move on from him. Let's take a look here. Okay, it doesn't include his contract. Let me do. So he signed a 4-year contract. So it might be unlikely that the Bucks would be willing to part from him, but he is going to be paid more next year in 26-27 than he is this year. Maybe the Bucks say, okay, you know what, we did just sign him, but we're looking to be bad, basically. Like, I mean, maybe Trey Murphy, that's an option. They can pull him up, see where he's at. Let me just pull up his contract, actually. Pull up Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy out in New Orleans. Again, he's under contract, but that's a New Orleans team that's kind of directionless. Again, like I'm not, CJ McCollum out in Atlanta. Let's take a look at what his situation is. CJ McCollum next year will be a free agent. Okay, he's going to be 35 years old, but he could be a leader. A guy who you could say, all right, he's obviously got the playoff experience and he has a record of success. I'm not saying that it's like if you only go out and get CJ McCollum, then maybe we have a problem. The one thing that I'll say that right now you basically can't do, barring again a crazy comeback in this series and a complete turnaround in his performance, you can't give the max to Jalen Duren. You can't. I mean, like, obviously he had a great regular season. I sung his praises all season long. You can't give him the max extension. You just can't. Not for playing like this in the playoffs. Because as much as the regular season is important, obviously, for, player accolades and all the rest, you need to perform in the playoffs. If you just like completely fall off in the playoffs, what's really the point? Yeah, we already got Tobias in his 30s, but he's going to probably walk. Because I believe he's a free agent next year too. And I'd be surprised. Maybe you say CJ McCollum is your Tobias Harris replacement. I don't know if that's a wise maneuver. But you're gonna have to fill the roster one way or the other. Yeah. It's tough. And I don't want to say you don't have any core. You have a decent core, but you need more scoring. That's the one thing that you're looking for. Obviously, the defense is underwhelmed this series for sure, but some of that could be coaching. Some of that could be a bad defensive matchup. There's a variety of reasons. Why? But the one consistent metric is that this team is just not that good scoring, especially not from deep. And I like Duncan Robinson. I thought he was a fine addition. I think he did help your scoring, but his playoff performances have not elevated you. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how the Tigers are in first place, but I'll take it. I mean, I do think that they are probably the best team in the division. But, as it is, the team is kind of middling right now, but I mean, hey, if they could take this series against the Braves have not lost a series all year. If they could take this series against the Braves, kind of steal one, that'd be nice. You come up in the weekend taking on the Rangers back at home. That, good things can happen, man. Now, I think we've had enough of our depression fest, right? I think we have. Can we move on from the depression fest unless you want to talk more Pistons? Yeah, Jack Flaherty, I mean, he had one magical year with us. He did. He had one magical year. He got us a couple prospects. And then basically since then, he really hadn't been that good. All right. Yes, let's do a little bit more positivity. Let's do something a little more positive, all right? I am just going to jump in directly to the NFL draft and particularly to the Detroit Lions draft. Now, as far as how this draft went, I did not like this Lions draft. I loved this Lions draft. See, I did that with a little trickeration there. You thought I was going to, turn all negative on you. But no, I loved this draft. From purely a position of need and positions that were taken. You took O-tackle, defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver, defensive tackle. That is basically exactly what I was looking for. Maybe minus the wide receiver. That was the only position that I was okay, fine, whatever. It's what is it, 6th round pick? Fine. Or 5th round pick? Fine. I don't care. It's outside of the top 150. Most of these guys are not going to make it to your practice squad, let alone to your starting lineup. Anyway, the top 3 needs of the team going into the draft, I think everybody would agree, were O-line, D-line, in particular the edge, and the secondary. And every single one of those positions was taken. They utilized all of their picks to an extraordinary level. You take the offensive tackle in the first round because it's, I'd say, probably the most valuable position for you. Then you take the edge in the second round in Derek Moore, a position that they finally, to the minds of many people, they finally truly, acknowledge in a way that is satisfactory. And then they go out and they get a cornerback in the secondary that some people were grading as high as a 2nd round pick. They got him in the 5th round. I mean, could you have scripted like a better pickup as far as just the position players? Obviously, I know you can debate the players in particular that they took. I am not here to give you the college analysis of an offensive tackle that played for a school that I never watched a single game of. I'm just not going to do it. I don't know if Blake Miller is going to be that great of a player in the NFL. You probably don't know if Blake Miller is going to be a great player in the NFL. But the people who are in charge of building the team, in particular, the guy who's been, I'd say, quite good at drafting overall since he's gotten here, he seems to think he's good. And again, it fills a need on the team. It fills you had a gap in right tackle. You were not going to trot out Larry Borum. Even though Larry Borum has a role, he could be a depth player. He could be a guy that, somebody goes down, you bring him in for a play or two. There's a role, okay? But Blake Miller, one of the other things that I wanted to point out on this, these guys actually played. And this was the major difference in the approach, especially to the edge position that Brad Holmes had taken prior to what he is taking now. Prior, and I don't know if this was intentional. It certainly, I would imagine, didn't seem intentional, but nevertheless it was. Brad Holmes would take guys like a Levi Onwuzurike or a Josh Paschal or what's his name? James Houston, you know? And those guys were decent when they were healthy, but terrible when they were not healthy. Or rather, not terrible when they were not healthy, not playing when they were not healthy. And they were not healthy very often. And that led to this gap in that edge role on the opposite end of Aiden Hutchinson, who is obviously an elite edge rusher. That goes without saying. But now you bring in a guy in a Derek Moore who isn't, constantly hurt, played a lot of games in college, is obviously, they're very familiar with guys from the Michigan program, won a national championship with Michigan for whatever that's worth. And again, there's now I don't think there's any reason for us to say they don't quote unquote care about the edge position. They obviously do. They found a guy that fit their need, that fit, where they wanted to take him, and now they got it. So I'm happy about it. Now, forget about some of the other stuff with the offseason. Post-draft, we put it all together, okay? Signing of Cade Mays, the bringing in of Isaiah Pacheco, trading of David Montgomery, some of the Roger McCreary signing in the secondary, some of the other moves. You take it all in with this draft now. Where do we stand as far as the angst level? I was at moderate angst going into the draft. I was nervous. I was like, okay, the one thing I don't want is I don't want us to take a position player. I don't want us to take a receiver or a tight end or running back, God forbid, or even a cornerback in the first round. I wanted offensive tackle or edge. They took an offensive tackle in the first round and an edge in the second round. My angst level is basically at a 0, or at least at a neutral. Would I love if they signed Cam Jordan? Yeah, I'd be fine with it. I think it'd be a good move for depth. The worst that could happen is that he doesn't play that much, or he gets outperformed by Derek Moore and Aiden Hutchinson. That's a good problem to have. I think your O-line is going to be much better. I think Blake Miller definitely. It would be hard for Blake Miller to hurt your offensive line based on how it performed last year. You have a better scheme. I do think Petzing is going to bring a much better scheme to this team. And look, as not to say that the defense is elite by any stretch, I do think it is still probably the weak point of the team. The one thing you can take away from it is that your offense being much better is probably going to mean that your defense is not going to have to be on the field as long as it was, which means you're not going to have to need to rely on the Legion of Whom in the same way that you seem to have to rely on that last year, because your offense is going to be able to take control of the clock by running the ball effectively if the offensive line performs to that level. Jared Goff is going to have time to throw the ball and make big plays to Amon-Ra, to Jamison Williams, and to hopefully Isaac Tesla, who after another year of development and with the departure of a Khalil Freeman is probably going to increase his target share. And of course, the reemergence of Sam Laporta and Brock Wright to help your tight end position. So I feel actually really good about the way this team looks post-draft. And this is why, again, I emphasize this. This is why you can't judge an offseason based on 2 days of free agency or the fact that there hasn't, or like 1 or 2 trades. You have to take it in its entirety. And the offseason is not over. You still have training camp. You still have the undrafted free agents that they have signed or could still be signed. And then, you could always make a move in the middle of the year. And obviously that's not offseason, but either way, it's not as though Brad Holmes has never made any trades in the middle of the year. It's been less than I think most people would want. But either way, I feel pretty good. I do. So hopefully these guys work out. Let me put it this way. If this draft class does work out and the Lions get themselves back on track and are back to being a Super Bowl contending team, if not a Super Bowl champion team, it will be because this draft was a hit. That's how big this draft is, and that's why I emphasize the need for Brad Holmes and company to nail this draft. And at least on paper, they did. So I got to give them their credit. And I think everyone should. All right. Here we go. Blake Miller was okay. Definitely can be something. Taylor Decker replacement. And look, Taylor Decker is great, but Taylor Decker was not some all-time world-beating tackle. If Blake Miller is at least as good as Taylor Decker, you're good with it. So, yeah. Anyway, Derek Moore finally showed Brad is caring about the defensive end. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, he's bringing in he's drafting an edge who isn't Josh Pascal and who wasn't, not playing for much of the season. Jimmy Rolder's okay. We needed a linebacker, but not urgently, so we can develop. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid pickup. I mean, because you have a linebacker room right now of Derek Barnes, who I think is pretty solid, Jack Campbell, who I think is excellent, and Malcolm Rodriguez, who I think is also very solid. You bring in a Jimmy Rolder, that only makes your room a little bit better, a little bit more depth. Especially with the departure of Alex Anzalone. Not that Alex Anzalone was amazing last year. I think he's past any prime that he had. So I think you'd bring in a guy like a Jimmy Rolder. That's fine. If he's, again, similar to Taylor Decker, if Jimmy Rolder could be at least as good as Alex Anzalone at some point, that's obviously a success. Keith Abney II could definitely be a steal. One of the more underrated slot corners, smaller guy. Kendrick Law was a little confused, but hey, with a speedy guy who could be the new Khalif Raymond. That was my thought too. Khalif Raymond departing. I was like, okay, this guy is slotted to be like your return man. I'm fine with it. You already have Dominic Lovett back there as well, but maybe this gives Lovett a little bit of competition, makes everybody better, and it's fine. Like you're taking a receiver in the 6th round or the 5th round, whatever. like you took Amon-Ra in the 5th round and it worked out really well. So obviously at that point you needed a receiver, but I'm fine with it. He's done. Brad Holmes done pretty good with his 5th round wide receivers. So maybe Kendrick Law turns out to be a bit of a steal. Not a good amount of these guys are probably not going to do that much for you, but still. Skylar Gill-Howard, his film at Texas Tech wasn't that bad, especially for a 6th round pick. Although we still got McNeil and Tyleek at defensive tackle, and Tyree West got Brad got another defensive end. Yeah, I mean, he's listed as defensive tackle, but yeah, he's kind of an edge, kind of a tackle. He's similar to like Levi Onwuzurike in that regard. But with Gil Howard and with West, can you really make any sort of main judgment? Like, obviously, you'd love for both of those guys to work out, but it's probably likely that they won't. It's a little bit of depth, making up for the Broderick Martin moves and the Levi Onwuzurikes and the Josh Pascals. If you can at least get the kind of production that you got from Pascal and Levi out of these two guys, I'd say it would be at least good enough. You got some years of success there. So, also for the undrafted free agent, one guy to point out is Luke Altmaier, quarterback from Illinois. Wow, did not know that we signed Luke Altmaier. Okay, I mean, you brought in Teddy Bridgewater, so I kind of get it. Like, you bring in a 3rd-string quarterback. Probably going to see some Luke Altmaier in the preseason, though. So give it a few months, and we'll be wondering why. We'll be dreading watching Luke Altmaier play football for the Detroit Lions. Lions wide receiver room now: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla, Greg Dortch, Dominic Lovett, Kendrick Law, Tom Kennedy, Jackson Meeks, and Malik Cunningham. On the face of it, that top 3, I think, is very good. I do. I think that's very good. And especially you have to consider that while this is just the receiver room, you got to also consider Sam Laporta as a receiving threat. You got to consider Brock Wright as a receiving threat. You got to consider Jahmyr Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco, Isaac Pacheco. Isaac Pacheco, I think, is a Tigers player. Isaiah Pacheco as potential receiving threats in their own right as well. So before people go, oh my gosh, our wide receiver 4 is Greg Dortch. It's like, well, you're probably not going to get to your wide receiver 4 in a normal circumstance anyway. Those last 3 are all practice squad guys. Just posting them out because in the preseason, those top 4 guys won't play at all. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, Malik Cunningham had, I think, he had a catch or 2 last year. Jackson Meeks, some of these guys end up. Tom Kennedy, he had some pretty nice plays last year for Detroit. Obviously it wasn't a successful season, so you don't necessarily want to go to that. But either way, it's something. And I don't know. I think that this is a good wake up. This is a good, move the fan base out of that doom and negative attitude that they had towards the team. And again, I pointed out, I think it was totally justified in many ways. Some of it I think was a little overblown, but now I think you have much less reason of angst. I think you come away from the draft feeling real good about the state of the team. Jackson Meeks had a decent preseason, probably one of the few bright spots I can remember when dealing with Hendon Hooker. Boy, oh boy, what a disaster. And look, this before some of the Brad Holmes people who just everything he does is bad. Just understand that every GM's going to do something like that. Howie Roseman drafted Jalen Rieger or Jaron Rieger. What's the guy's name? Rieger? Jalen Rieger. Yeah. Right in front of Justin Jefferson. It's going to happen. And every good GM, every sport, across the board, there's going to be a pick where you're like, what in the world were you thinking? It happens. Also, so I'm on just the Detroit Lions draft history, and it has the franchise records and everything. The Lions playoff record is 9-15. Thought I'd point that out. And their winningest coach, including playoffs, is Wayne Fonz with a 67-71 record. Let that be known that the winningest coach in Lions history has a losing record. I'll give Hooker one thing. It lit a fire under Goff, although he was a 3rd-round pick, he was an ACL tear away from being a 1st-round pick. I don't know. I mean, it could have. It's certainly possible, but I'm not really convinced that it really had that much of an effect on Goff. I think it definitely had an effect on the fan base because there were people clamoring, even in 2023, for Hendon Hooker to come in at certain points in that season, which, I mean, looking back is hysterical. But yeah. Excuse me. Detroit sucks. Oh, okay. Well, I guess, all right, guys, this show is over. Detroit sucks. Travis Andrews told me it sucks. I don't know. I guess we shouldn't be fans anymore. Travis, out of curiosity, I just want to know what city you're from. What city do you root for? Could be an Orlando fan. It's over, Detroit fans. It's over. You heard it here first. Hold on. Wait, hold on. Where's my breaking news? Where's the breaking news sound effect? Hold on. Travis, I need you to calm down. Hold on. We have breaking news. It's over. Travis has announced it. Breaking news. Hold on. Wait a minute. Orlando Magic and Chicago Bulls? All right, now you got to tell the story here. Come on, Travis. Let's hear it. Let me hear the story. Where are the Bulls? Yeah, when do the Bulls play? Just out of curiosity. Does anyone know when the Bulls game is? Look, I kid. I mean, I wouldn't say bandwagon if he's rooting for Orlando. That's been a rough ride, admittedly, for the Orlando Magic. But could be for the Bulls. It could be. He likes both teams. All right, look. We're not going to bully poor Travis, all right? He's a little excited. He's finally got a team in Orlando that's successful. They don't have a whole lot going for them. They got Disney World and the Magic. I for one, will let him have it. I will. Especially because we don't really have much to say. Like, yeah, they're beating us, and they very well could win the series. You know, tanking for AJ. Who's AJ? Am I making myself look stupid? Who's considered who's AJ? Who's the number 1 pick in this draft? NBA Tankathon. Let me look it up. Who is AJ? AJ Dimbatsta? That's the guy? The BYU freshman? Okay. Right now it has the Magic, or the Magic. the Wizards. I mean, like, what are the odds here of Chicago? Chicago's at 9th. So they got a 4.5% shot. Okay. All right. That's not 0. Let's see how many lotteries we got here. Let's sim it. All right. Washington. Okay. So this one has Chicago going down a spot, picking 10th. Okay. All right. Let's try it again. And Atlanta. Oh, I guess from the pick they got from New Orleans. Okay. That would, dude, that'd be crazy. Atlanta just got the number 1 overall pick a couple years ago, and they're in the playoffs right now. If they win that series against the Knicks and end up with the first overall pick due to that trade they'd made with New Orleans, Troy Weaver and what's his name, Joe Dumars need to be like banned from basketball. That's crazy. All right, let's try it again. All right, the Pacers. Okay, that could be interesting. In this case, Chicago also moving down. We're not helping you out, Travis. I'm sorry. Sam. All right, we got the Nets, and Chicago doesn't move. Okay, but the Nets. Okay, what do we got next? All right, we got the Hawks again. All right, listen. It's not looking good. Not looking good. All right, let's try it again. Sim lottery and the Hawks again. What is Tankathon trying to say, dude? I think Tankathon's trying to say that Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars need to be away from basketball forever. All right, let's try it again. Here we go. We got the Mavs. Okay, now that would be cruel. That would be so ridiculous. If the Mavs get 2 number 1 overall picks in a row, I'm going to throw my computer out the window. That would be unacceptable. All right, what next? Oh, there we go. We got the Bulls. All right. There you go. Anyone know how many chances that was? Anyone know? I don't know how many times that took, but we got it. So there you go. You got AJ Diababadu. You got that guy. So, all right. Well, that's pretty much all I had. Didn't have anything else to go off of here. Tigers in a 0-0 tie, top of the 3rd. Man on first, 2 outs. Kevin McGonigal at the plate, who, by the way, is potentially the best player in the American League. Like, he's like, I think he's the WAR leader in the American League, which is absolutely crazy. Don't know how that happened. But hey, we might have a Rookie of the Year and MVP potentially. So, all right. Anyway, that's all I got. So look ahead tomorrow night. We will be back for the Magic Pistons Game 5 live reaction. God willing, the Pistons will extend this series. I guess. I don't even know. I don't know what I want. The part of me that just wants the Band-Aid ripped off, but the part of me just doesn't want to let go. I'm like Rose with Leonardo DiCaprio on Titanic. I can't let go. I have to hold on. So that's what I'm probably going to do. So anyway, we'll be back tomorrow night. Keep an eye out for that. And with that all being said, thank you all for stopping by, listening in, and hanging out. Please hit the like. Please hit the subscribe button if you have not already. And once again, we'll be back tomorrow night. And if there is no game, if they lose Game 5, then obviously we won't be live on Friday or on Sunday for the rest of the series. So we'll talk about it next week either way. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Good night. See you later.